Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it another minute or so to let folks join us here, and then we'll be getting started. Looks like everybody who's in the waiting room is in now.
We still have some people joining just now.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Greg Smith. I'm Executive Director of Florida Literacy Coalition, and I'm pleased to welcome you today to this professional development opportunity. I think it's a pretty special one, and it's going to be a little bit more in depth than some of the other stuff that we've traditionally offered. And we also are doing this in partnership with Links, and Links really is taking the lead on doing this as part of their professional development that they offer nationally through the U.S. Department of Education, in an initiative administered by the American Institute for Research. This particular topic is one that's close to my heart. I've presented on similar on this topic area before, and I know that this is something that really resonates with a lot of practitioners in the field. How do we motivate adult learners to persist and succeed? And so we're talking about going beyond student retention. I know retention is a big issue for programs, but really doing that in a qualitative way that helps to motivate students and help them to meet their needs and their goals, and so that they can make meaningful progress. And as part of that, kind of helping them to build some resilience and grit and to overcome some of those barriers and personal setbacks that may make it challenging sometimes for them to continue their adult education experiences. And so we're really fortunate today to have this session, and our main presenter, Christy, who's going to be sharing with you good research and evidence-based practices as part of this three-part series. So today we'll be doing this webinar, and then there'll be a session, as hopefully all of you understand at this point, a course that you'll be taking over the next month, and then we'll be wrapping up on the 5th of December. So we really appreciate Links making this opportunity available. At FLC, we certainly appreciate the support of the Florida Department of Education as well. It makes this and other training opportunities available through the Florida Literacy Coalition. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hannah Schlosser with Links to get things kicked off. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Greg. And hi, and welcome, everyone. As Greg said, we are so excited that you are here with us today. As Greg said, my name is Hannah Schlosser, and I'm a member of the Links team. I'm going to be starting the presentation today with some quick information about Links, and then I'll be handing it over to Christy Reyes, the facilitator for this webinar, and also for the whole professional development opportunity. So before I get started, here's some quick information about Links. Links is operated by the American Institutes for Research, or AIR, under a contract with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Career Technical and Adult Education. This disclaimer that you see on the screen lets you know that although working under this contract, the content does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. We also want to note that event participants are expected to adhere to the Links Community Code of Conduct. Links live online events use a third-party platform that could be vulnerable to hacking and abuse from outside parties, but anyone involved in promoting indecent, inflammatory, or offensive content will be immediately removed from the event. So as I said, my name is Hannah Schlosser, and I'm a member of the Links team. We are going to be starting with a quick Links overview and introducing you to Christy and doing some introductions yourselves. And then we'll go over the objectives for today's session and really move into the Links training, which is motivating adult learners, focusing on self-efficacy, goal setting, and the learning environment. And then at the end, we will wrap up and talk about next steps, clarifying some of those things that Greg already mentioned about what comes next following this webinar. So I'm going to start by providing a brief overview of Links, and I just want to see either in the chat or if you have your camera on or if you can use the hand raise feature, how many of you are familiar with Links already? Can you raise a virtual hand or say yes in the chat? Give a thumbs up or no if you're not familiar with Links. Great, Donna's familiar. Couple thumbs up. All right, well, if you're not familiar with Links, that's totally fine. Thank you, Christina, for sharing that. We're going to give you a brief overview of Links so that you can get excited by the opportunities that Links offers. It's a really great resource for adult educators, no matter what role you are in. So let me talk briefly about Links. Links stands for the Literacy Information and Communication System, and it's the arm of OCTAE that is meant to help expand evidence-based practice in the field of adult education. We do a lot of this through the Links website, and it provides high quality and on-demand educational opportunities to practitioners of adult education so that you can help your learners successfully transition to post-secondary education and 21st century jobs. And the resources that are offered through Links are really geared toward adult educators in all positions. So whether you are a state level person, a professional development specialist, an administrator, an instructor, a student support coordinator, some combination of multiple roles, Links has something for you. On the screen, you can see the 5 components of Links. I'm not going to go into all of them today, but we do have a very vast community of practice that has participants from all over the country. We offer a learning portal, which is where you all will be accessing the course that will be the next part of this professional development opportunity. And I'll be sharing with you at the end of our training today how to access that course. We have a resource collection that is research-based, and it is available to all of you for free around a variety of topics. There's state resources that allow us to offer training opportunities like this one that you're participating in today, and a learner center, which is a great space to send your learners to go and do some additional hands-on learning, as well as a resource for teachers to use in their own lesson planning. So let's look at some of these things a little bit more closely. So first, where do you access Links? You go to links.ed.gov to get to this website. Again, it is free for all. And I'll put this link in the chat for you shortly. You are going to need a Links account to take the courses through the Learning Portal. The Learning Portal is an open access web-based learning platform that enables you all, adult educators, access to high quality online learning opportunities. All of these courses are free and available to adult educators, and they will help you to focus on professional development in areas that are important to you. Again, for this particular training, at the end of the webinar today, we'll show you where to access the course that's specific to this professional development opportunity in particular, but there are lots of other courses in the Learning Portal that are open and available to you as well. I also mentioned the Links community. If you are not already a member of a Links community, this is an amazing place to meet with colleagues from around the country. All of our different states and territories have representatives in these different communities. You can see some of the topics on the left side of the screen there. Just to name a few, we have career pathways, we have disabilities and equitable outcomes, integrating technology, program management, teaching and learning, etc. So you can join any or all communities that are of interest to you. Join the members and the subject matter experts who are parts of those community and participate in events and discussions, ask questions, and share resources. So highly recommend joining a Links community. You can use your phone to scan the QR code to access those communities directly. And again, I'll put the links in the chat for you shortly. I will also be showing you at the end of this webinar today how to specifically access the private community that is for this group of adult educators participating in this training and will be a key piece of your next steps moving forward. So I'll do that at the end of our training today. And finally, here are just some more links, reminders of places for you to connect with Links. We have the community, the learning portal, the resource collection, the learner center, and we're also on social media. So please join and follow. We offer a lot of wonderful free opportunities for you all, and we're excited to see you both in this training and in these other spaces. And with that, I am going to be passing it over and welcoming Christy Reyes. Christy, as I mentioned, is the facilitator for today's webinar, as well as for the remainder of the professional development opportunity that we have available to you today through Links. And I just want to very quickly introduce Christy and say Christy is a tenured non-credit ESL faculty member at Mira Costa College in Southern California. She has extensive experience in providing professional learning opportunities for the adult education field in her state and others. She's developed and delivered online and in-person workshops, and that includes this series as well as her involvement in the course that you're going to be taking later. She's researched and expanded professional development, facilitated online courses, and led training of trainer institutes. So we are very lucky to have Christy with us as the facilitator for this training. Christy, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here on behalf of your students. Seriously, because I think that's why you're here, to always grow and learn to do better for them. So I'd like you to introduce yourself. If you can please go to the chat. I have a couple of questions for you to answer, and please use the chat as a back channel. If you have something to share along the way, go ahead and let's not have this be a monologue. Please go ahead and share any thoughts that come across in the chat. But if you can right now, please let us know what and where you teach. What and where you teach. And if you're not teaching at the current moment, what is your role at your agency? Are you administrator? Are you support staff? So once again, what and where do you teach? And what is your role if you don't teach? And then once you've answered that question, take a moment to think of your answer for this question. What motivates you when you have a challenging task? What motivates you when you have a challenging task? So I'll pause for a moment to let you share in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and have a look there. So what and where do you teach? Oh, that's wonderful. You're soon going to have your first adult class learners. Oh, that's welcome to this beautiful profession. You will love it. Okay, so a lot of ESL teachers, welcome. And some directors, thank you. And so my next question is, what motivates you when you have a challenging task? What is your motivator? Sometimes just completing that task and crossing it off your to-do list is very motivating, right? remembering how in the past you weren't sure that you would get through such challenging tasks, and you did. And seeing your incremental progress, that's so important. And really, you'll see how that relates to student goal setting when you start getting into the course, the desire to do well, accomplishing goals, etc. So thank you, everybody. So I imagine what motivates us are some of the same factors that motivate our students. So we can keep that in mind, but really we're going to be delving into the research too, because, it's different motivating yourself to lose a few pounds versus motivating yourself to finish a course or a program when you have 100 other things pulling you away. As many of our adult learners do. So let's go ahead and delve in today for this session. We're going to really look at some of the research behind different things that we can implement in our classrooms to motivate our students to finish the classes, to finish their programs, and to go on to their next goals. So for today, these are our objectives. And so you know that our adult learners have very complex lives, and they have a lot of responsibilities. They have constraints on their time and their availability to attend our classes. So supporting their persistence is one of our biggest challenges and charges. The purpose of our session today is to provide a review of research and implications for practice on how program administrators, so thank you for coming, administrators, as well as those of us at the ground level, instructors, how we can help motivate students to persist in their efforts. So we will explore insights from research about key components that impact learner motivation in 3 different areas: self-efficacy, goal setting, and the learning environment. We'll also be referring to a program classroom self-assessment that I will ask Giovanna to share in the chat in just a little bit. And we'll also post this in the links group so you can refer to it later. This self-assessment can be found in the files later on today in the links group. And you will also find chapter 5 in the links group later on today from the Supporting Learning and Motivation publication that I'm going to speak about. This is one chapter. And it's not necessarily a how-to manual, but it provides the framework for what we're going to be going over today. So we want to begin by introducing you to the research that informed this session. I think it's always important to start with research because that can inform what we do with some grounding in evidence. So this document is a little bit dated, but it still is tried and true. It's Improving Adult Literacy Instruction. You can download it for free, the entire document, and it synthesizes the research on literacy and learning to improve literacy instruction in the U.S. and to recommend a more systematic approach to research, practice, and policy. The whole book focuses on individuals 16 and up, and those who are no longer eligible or no longer part of the K-12 system. So our students, right? And it identifies factors that affect literacy development in adolescence and adulthood in general, and examines their implications for strengthening literacy instruction for our adult population. It also discusses technologies for learning, and we know that that is rapidly changing every moment, different technologies that are coming out. But different technologies that can assist with multiple aspects of teaching, assessment, and accommodations for learning. So there are several companion guides as well that were developed from this main report that provide practical recommendations and activities for teachers and administrators to use. They are all free and available online. They include the titles you see here: Improving Adult Literacy Instruction, Developing Reading and Writing, Preparing Teachers, Building Evidence for Sound Policy, and Improving Adult Literacy Instruction, Supporting Learning and Motivation. So if you have extra time for some reading, you could take a look at those, or maybe put that on your winter break reading list, right? Okay, So this booklet, right, that you see an image of on the screen is based on the full report, and it describes the principles of effective instruction to guide us to design and administer adult literacy programs and courses. It also explores ways to motivate our learners to persist in their studies. And we know that this is really crucial, persistence. Let's face it, our jobs depend on it for job security, to get students through our programs, to keep them coming. And, the word of mouth is so powerful, right? When students are getting what they need from our courses, they will tell everyone they know, and we will just continue with our charge. But, it does take thousands of hours of study and practice for our students to become proficient. I don't always float that 1,000 hours in front of them because I don't want them to become discouraged, but persistence is really important. And I'm sure you've had the same experience that I have, students who start and stop out, start and stop out. Though there are many things we can do to support them. So this booklet here concludes by describing the technologies, again, as I mentioned, and it is not intended, as I said, as the golden rule. We all have our own professional judgment for what works with our students. And I think as you go through the course, you're going to see some things that, hey, I already do that. And you can give yourself a little pat on the back, or maybe you will find, hey, I used to do this, implement or use this strategy, but it's been a while. Maybe I should bring it back because it is supported by research. So let's go ahead next and delve into the research findings. So the chapter in that booklet on motivation, engagement, and persistence discusses topics such as the psychology and motivation of learning. As Greg Smith mentioned, there's been research about growth mindset and grit and so on. It also talks a bit about motivation, engagement, and persistence with self-regulation and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So the three main themes of the chapter are focusing on this bigger theme of self-efficacy as well as goal setting and the learning environment. So today we're going to look at each of these three a little bit closer in turn. So this is a definition of motivation and persistence defined by John Cummings' 2007 publication. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of his research. 2007 does sound like a long time ago, but this is the research we continually come back to in adult education. So his publication was Persistence, Helping Adult Education Students Reach Their Goals. And it was a very pretty much far-ranging project and research that came into this. So as we look at this definition, I'm going to let you read it on your own for a moment. And I would like you to see what is notable for you. So I'm going to pause for just a moment. So maybe you, like me, when I first started learning about Cummings' research, I would take it very hard personally as a teacher when students would drop out, but then I would see them coming back. And so with Cummings, he sort of changed the vernacular for us. Students don't necessarily drop out of our programs, as you see them come back. Their lives are very hectic. And so it's important for us to maybe use the different terminology of stop out. If I were in the same shoes as some of my students, I would find it very hard to continue with my studies. But in time, if they finish our programs and we can help them persist, that's really our the goal of what we do. So it's not completely clear, and there is a lot of debate about how extrinsic rewards contribute to persistence. I've read studies of what's been done in K-12 to have students succeed and not so much persist because they don't have a choice about whether or not they go to school. And some of those extrinsic rewards did not really motivate students. Now, there's not been a ton of research in adult ed about extrinsic motivation, but as you can see here, intrinsic motivation is when our students take that step on their own to enroll in and come to our classes, whereas extrinsic is there's some sort of carrot dangled in front of them. There's some reward that is not maybe internal. So I'm going to read an example to you, and I'd like you to share in the chat if you think this is an example of intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. Okay, so listen to this one. A student has been told by their boss that they need to get their GED in order to keep their job. The boss tells them, you need your GED if you want to keep working here. Would that be intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? Go ahead and share in the chat. Thank you. Yes, definitely extrinsic, right? And so, everybody wants to keep their jobs, so that might be a very strong motivating force for students, right? Here is a different example, okay? And you're going to listen to this and then share in the chat if you think this is an intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. A student wants to be better able to help their kids with their reading homework. So a student comes to classes, they want to help their children with their homework from school. Extrinsic or intrinsic? You got it right, exactly. So honestly, students who are more intrinsically motivated or show their behaviors as more autonomous do end up showing better outcomes. I'm sure you've noticed this if you've been teaching for some while. The students who make that effort and they're doing it for themselves a bit more tend to persist and tend to show better outcomes. Okay, so that's our definition of persistence from Cummings. Let's go ahead and move on. So this framework is from that chapter of that book that I was referring to in the main report, and it describes the multiple dimensions of persistence and puts at the center the question of how to support persistence through the design of effective learning environments. This is from chapter 5 of this Improving Adult Literacy instruction. So we see motivation, engagement and interest, engaging context, texts and tasks, and the last one we see there is systems and structures. So this chart that you see here was developed by Christine Smith, an associate professor at the University of Massachusetts. And as you see in this table, there is a diverse array of contributors to individual motivation that have been identified in psychological studies. Among them are self-efficacy, self-control, goal orientations and task choice, interest, self-regulation, and self-concept of ability. Each of these factors, although they're separate, interact with the other factors in really complex ways to influence motivation for our students to persist. So before we go into each of these individual beliefs and environmental factors that can influence student motivation, let's take a moment. Please go to the chat and let's just share what comes to your mind when you think of the diversity of individual factors that can affect student motivation. So when you're thinking of your students and their motivation, what is one of the top individual factors that can affect student motivation in your experience? I'll say that again. What is one of the top individual factors that can affect student motivation, whether for positive or negative? Finances, yes. Thank you. Family life. Yes, Michelle, right now, everybody in society is there's the mental health thing, family assistance, and sometimes family support, family and finances, exactly. Transportation. Oh, and students who from maybe are immigrant students or refugee students, sometimes the homesickness. Or, you know, I don't know if in Florida, if you're getting a lot of refugees, we tend to, in the area where I teach, and you can just imagine the trauma as well as the thoughts of what's going on in your country would be really hard to concentrate in class. Time, exactly. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you can see lots of different factors, feeling alone in a difficult new world. Thank you. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, we can see that all these personal things that are, you know, kind of, they can block our students from not just persisting, but also just like concentrating in class sometimes, right? When you've got all these different thoughts in your minds. So this chart shows how nature or individual factors and nurture, those environmental factors, can impact motivation. Psychological studies have identified many factors that contribute to individual motivation, including self-efficacy, as I've said, self-control, goal orientations, interest, and others. So it's important to keep in mind that they interact with one another. And you know, for example, we can think of the goals that people set that are related to their self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, if you're not familiar with that term, is defined as a perceived ability to perform well on a task. A little bit different from self-confidence, which is your overall feeling about yourself. But self-efficacy, for example, would be the feeling that I am able to write a paragraph or that I'm able to solve a math problem. That is self-efficacy. So when we can help students formulate goals related to self-efficacy, that is a factor that can help students persist, and that will also give value to the task that we assign. So you see these individual factors. I don't know about your programs, but I definitely have students in my programs who they come and they think I'm too old to be here. But beliefs about one's intelligence, that growth mindset. We can see educational history. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where a student comes in and they've been placed into a certain intermediate or higher level, and they say, no, but I didn't finish high school. I didn't finish middle school in my country for our immigrant students, or I haven't been in school for a long time. I need to start at the beginning. Some of those factors can come into play, as well as culture, life situation, classroom and program environment, which is actually something we can have some control over, political and economic structures, and the instruction we provide can be the environmental factors. So a little bit more about self-efficacy. The goals that people set are related to their sense of self-efficacy or their perceived ability to perform well on a task. When learners expect to be successful on a particular task, they are more likely to put forth the effort and persistence necessary to perform well. I love this image. So efficacy is the capacity to produce an effect. Self-efficacy is a person's judgment about being able to perform a particular activity. It's a student's I can or I can't belief. The researcher behind a lot of self-efficacy information is Albert Bandura, and he is really considered the father of self-efficacy theory. He's led many studies in this area, and there is a growing body of research that reveals that there is a positive, significant relationship between students' self-efficacy beliefs, the feeling that they can do something, and their academic performance. Self-efficacy includes, first, what activities students select. Second, how much effort they put forth. Third, how persistent they are in the face of difficulties, grit, and the difficulty of the goals they set. So you're going to see all of this come into play when you start looking at the different 9 strategies that are discussed and really gone over much more in depth in the course that you're going to be enrolling in. So students with low self-efficacy, they don't expect to do well. And they often do not achieve at a level that is commensurate or equal to their actual abilities. They do not believe they have the skills to do well, so they don't try. You've probably heard of Carol Dweck's growth mindset theory. And so a lot of times it's that fixed mindset that they've come into our classes like, I can't do it and I'm no good at it, but they haven't even tried. So people with low self-efficacy toward a task are more likely even just to avoid it. They just walk away sometimes from our classes. Also, the connection between self-efficacy and achievement gets stronger as students advance through school. So if we give them opportunities for little successes along the way, they're going to start building their sense of self-efficacy. By the time our students, if they do transition onto college, but the research shows when they do, their self-efficacy beliefs are more strongly related to their achievement than any measure of their ability. So in the beginning, when I asked you what motivates you, at least one of you put in the chat, thinking of my past achievements. Exactly. So different from self-esteem, again, that's like self-confidence, this general sense of self-worth. Self-efficacy relates to how confident people feel about performing particular tasks in our classrooms. Okay. So moving on a little bit, this slide reviews additional context to self-efficacy compared to self-esteem. While there's a little evidence that enhancing students' general self-esteem can lead to increases in achievement, self-efficacy in a particular domain, such as education or health, relates positively to outcomes in that domain. So you can see some examples of literacy, self-efficacy, the belief that you can succeed at writing college papers, the belief that you can understand letters sent home by a child's teacher, the belief that you can pass the high school equivalency test. So those are things that we can boost in our students. You know, sometimes in the past, I've praised students for who they are, and that builds up their self-confidence, but that is not really helpful in building self-efficacy. What I need to think about is my instruction and providing it in a way that students can perform well and then build their self-efficacy based on their achievements rather than a general sense of I'm a good person. So take a look at these questions on the screen, okay? And please share in the chat. Can you think of a task you've never done but felt you could successfully accomplish? Why do you feel you could be successful? Think of a task or accomplishment that you aren't sure you could successfully accomplish and why. Think of a task or accomplishment that you feel fairly certain you could not successfully accomplish and why. Okay, so just reflecting on those questions for a moment. How does your own self-efficacy impact your motivation to learn? So when I look at that final question, something I could never successfully accomplish is repair the engine of a car. I have no experience in that. And I have never had any successes. I've never achieved anything in that. But if I build my growth mindset and someone shows me and I learn through mistakes and support of my trainer or teacher, I probably could do that, right? Whereas when I look at the top 2 questions, relating back to how you probably would answer these two as well, I think of my past successes and my past achievements, even if there were failures along the way. So our students' self-efficacy will influence their motivation. So you're going to learn some strategies in the course for how we can do that as well, build student self-efficacy, okay? So we want to increase adult students' self-efficacy and literacy, and not just make them feel good about themselves in general. While that's, a nice thing to do, that's not going to help them progress through our courses. Note that self-efficacy is adaptive or malleable. It also changes with age. And research tells us that a stronger self-efficacy in midlife predicts improved cognitive and intellectual performance over the lifespan. Hey, that's good for me to know. Experiences and a more active lifestyle sustain self-efficacy. So I'm not sure about your programs, but we look at my program and most of the students are 35 and up. We have only a small number of students who are much younger. And I love this. Thank you. I cannot make a baby dress with no pattern. I have some knowledge. I cannot make a wedding dress, even with a pattern. But you could learn, right? So thank you for sharing that. Yes. And so, when our students are at this point of their lives, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, we can share this information with them that, as I said, research tells us that stronger self-efficacy in midlife predicts improved cognitive and intellectual performance over the lifespan. So in addition, learners can have certain beliefs about intelligence that can affect their self-efficacy. You'll learn about this with the Carol Dweck work, that growth mindset, when people think that intelligence is something you're born with or not, they're coming into our classes with a fixed mindset, but we can change that. We can help them change a fixed mindset. And so students who hold this view that intelligence is incremental and malleable, then they are able, just like you've put in the chat, that then they are able to say, okay, I may not have achievements or experience with this, but with a growth mindset and knowing that intelligence can be built and skills can be built, I am capable of learning a new skill. So these students are likely to adopt performance goals. So you're going to, if you're not familiar with these terms, you're going to learn about performance versus mastery goals. Performance, I'm looking at my own performance over time. Mastery goals, I'm comparing with my classmates. How did you do? How did you do? Which is a natural human instinct, but we need to help students make goals and look at their own personal performance over time, or performance goals. So when learners believe that they have some control over their learning, they are more likely to take on challenges and to persist with difficult tasks, as compared with students who perceive that they have little control over their learning environment or their learning outcomes. So you'll be learning a lot about student choice and autonomy in the classroom. That's one of the 9 strategies you'll be learning about in the course. So providing our adult learners with choice about what activities to do or how they can demonstrate their learning, that will increase intrinsic motivation, provided that we don't give a million options, but we give them some options that are not overwhelming the number. And experiencing higher levels of perceived self-control predicts numerous positive outcomes, among them engagement in school and academic achievement. I think that in adult ed, we already treat our adult learners as adults. We don't have to be constantly looking over their shoulders or dealing with behavior problems, luckily for us, right? So we are better equipped and better able to give students more self-control, more control in the learning environment and choices. Okay, so you can see from these points the importance of building self-efficacy for our students. And note that self-efficacy will have an impact in other areas, and we'll be examining that in just a little bit, which are goal setting and the learning environment. So Giovanna, if you can, please post the self-assessment document in the chat. So if you can please, everybody find the chat. I love it. Yes, you can. Yes. Okay. If you can find the chat, and Giovanna is going to post a document. And if you can click on that and go ahead and open. And while we're waiting for that, you can just see on the screen some of the summary content of what we've been going over regarding self-efficacy. Okay. So I see that Giovanna has posted in the chat a document, links TA Florida, PDF, or no, it's a Word document. So if you can go ahead and click on that document, and it's going to open up, and it looks somewhat like this. This is a self-assessment, and we would, again, this will be posted in the links group for this Florida technical assistance. And you're going to see in each category, self-efficacy, goal setting, and the learning environment, a summary of the research findings. And this will help you self-assess and think of implications for your own practice. Things that you already do well, things that you maybe need to explore further, and things that you definitely want to improve, okay? So this self-assessment is designed to be used by you individually, or maybe you want to take it back and share with your colleagues, or even do this as a program exercise. The rating scale and notes column can be used as at a later time, but I just want to show you this. And you're going to be going through this and looking at the items that are of the highest interest for your work. So I'm going to pause so you can just look at that for a moment. Before we go on. Okay, so we're going to continue on in the interest of time. So again, this is a tool that will kind of help you focus on some of the different research findings, as well as when you're going through the course, relate to the strategies you see in the course, and help you formulate a goal for yourself. Speaking of goals, let's move on to goal setting for our learners. Before we look at some key terms related to goal setting, can you please share in the chat? Do you have your students set goals for your class? Do you do a goal setting exercise early in a new term or semester with your students? You can type yes or no. Awesome. Okay. All right. So you're already using one of the research-based best practices. And if no, this may be something you want to focus on for the future. All of the research really supports this, okay? And I know at some agencies I've worked with, goal setting is done in the registration orientation for new students, but unfortunately, the teachers don't always get to see what goals students have set. So if that's your case, maybe work within your, with your program administration to find out a way to get that information to teachers, so that it's not double duty. But if it's not done at the agency level, definitely think about doing this with your students. So for those of you who indicated, yes, you do goal setting with your students, if you can share any anecdotes in the chat, anything that you've seen as a result of using goal setting with your students in terms of student motivation and or persistence. Have the results been good? Have they been kind of flatline? Have they been phenomenal? Go ahead and share in the chat if you do use goal setting, any results that you've seen. And okay, Steve. So hopefully as you go through the course, honestly, it's hard to fit in. It is. goal setting when we have so many things we need to teach. But with all the strong research that you're going to learn about, really taking that extra time will yield good results. But what I have found, and in my own experience, is I have students set goals at the beginning and never really return to the goals. And honestly, our students don't always know how to set goals. They think that a goal is something like far off into the future. So we do need to help them set proximal goals for our courses, and for which they can see progress towards those goals in the time that they're in our classes. So there's some good practices that will help if you've tried this. Okay, good. You have a needs result, pretty good results. So setting the goals, but also returning to them and talking to students, being their buddy or setting up a classroom buddy that gives them some accountability is one of those strategies you're going to find out about. So here are some key terms about goal setting. To motivate persistence and success, we need to help our learners break down their learning goals into short-term or proximal, as well as long-term, literacy goals. If our learners are helped in setting near-term goals, not just the distant ones, GED, high school diploma, go to college, but the goals that they can see progress towards in our own classes, they're much more likely to experience success. And when they experience those successes, that builds their self-efficacy. So supporting learners' awareness of progress week by week can motivate their persistence. It could be something like, hey, pull out your goal sheet, put a check next to the things, or take a couple notes about things you did this week to further your goal, okay? So looking at goal progress week by week can motivate persistence as learners reach their near-term goals and recognize that these are the path towards those long-term goals. So goal orientation theory categorizes goals into the following types. Mastery goal. So a learner acquires and masters a skill. When a learner holds a mastery goal, then that learner engages with a task in order to improve their ability. The goal is to truly master the task. When students hold this type of goal, a mastery goal, the point of comparison is themselves. They're comparing how they were, their skill ability when they came into the course, with how they are at the current time and tracking as they go forward. So that's an important goal to have students set. So the next is performance approach goal. And this is a learner acquires and measures the performance of that skill against others' performance or an established standard. I don't know in your program if you use TABE test or CASAS test. In my classes, we use CASAS testing, and students, I would privately provide them with their test results and immediately, what did you get? What did you get? Like, hey, no, that's not important. Take out your goal sheet and mark your progress from the last time you took the test. Okay, that's what we need to have students do, not this comparison. So when a learner holds a performance approach goal, the goal is to demonstrate their ability relative to others. And the students start comparing their performance with that of their fellow classmates, with the goal of demonstrating greater competence. Well, that can be a motivating factor. I've had students who are husbands and wives together in the same class, and they are very motivated by the competition to perform better than someone else in the class. But proximal goals are the short-term goals. Distal goals are the intermediate long-term goals. And so really, we need to help students form those mastery goals. Few more terms. Performance avoidance goal, that's acquiring and measuring skill against others or a standard. So you can see how that's related to mastery, or performance approach. And goal structures, mastery, great goal. Yeah, excellent tool. Goal structures, mastery goal or performance goal, how goals are emphasized in classrooms, how students perceive the way goals are emphasized. All of this is really something you're going to be learning about, and hopefully you'll reconsider how you do goal setting if it's not working out so well, or if you don't to start using it. Finally, I've mentioned already a couple of times Dr. Carol Dweck, and she came up with the paradigm of growth mindset, fixed in growth. And growth mindset is defined as the attitude of learners who believe that their skills can be developed over time with practice and perseverance. So these students, I'm sure you recognize them. They come into our classes and they embrace challenges, and they understand that mistakes are a part of the learning process. And for students who come into our classes who may have more of a fixed mindset, we can explain to them about Carol Dweck's, growth mindset theory, that over practice with time, you can rewire your brain, and you can make, different neural networks stronger. So she really does go into the brain research, if that is interesting to you. I like to share that information with my students as well. So moving on, we've talked about goals and the terms. And are we aware of the messages we might be giving students when we are working with them? If we are really emphasizing mastery, effort, and improvement, then our students will be more likely to adopt these personal mastery goals. So again, while for some students, the performance goals may be motivating, we need to help students set the mastery goals. Okay, let's move on. Okay, just a little bit more about the research behind goal setting. Helping students, once again, set those short-term goals is very important. And so to motivate our students to persist and help them gain greater access to success in our course, we should really be helping them break down their learning goals into those short-term and literacy goals. If they set these short-term goals, then not just distance goals, they're going to experience more success, okay, as I've said. And when a learner holds a mastery goal, then they're engaging with a task to improve their ability. And they're more likely to actually have a little more success because they're looking at their progress over time. So mastery goals do lead to better outcomes and so on. So I've kind of mostly gone over this, but mindset affects both resilience and goal attainment. So we're going to do one quick activity to wrap up about, almost wrap up about goals. So in this activity, think of a goal you have for the future, teachers and administrators, support staff. Think of the steps you need to reach that goal, okay? And then as you're thinking of your goal and what steps you would need, if you feel comfortable to share in the chat, what parallels, as you think of your goals and the steps, what parallels does this activity have as you are working with students to set goals? If you would like to share in the chat something that comes to your mind, please do. Okay. So hopefully you're thinking of, okay, as I think of my goal and I think of the steps, just having it in my head is not going to get me closer to the goal, right? So we know that having our students set goals is important, and we need to take the time to help them set their goals. They often need guidance, so we can help them identify goals. SMART goals. Thank you, Donna. Exactly. We can help them identify benefits of those goals as well as barriers. And we can discuss, individually as a whole class, some of the ways to overcome barriers. We can help students create a SMART goal, a goal plan that looks at the gap between their goal and where they are in their skills currently, and break down the goals into steps. So it's more than just having a goal, but what are you going to do each week to get towards that goal? And then, as I've mentioned already, revisiting the goals with your students, having them, document their progress, helping them become accountable towards that goal, and revising the goals as necessary. Okay, so thank you. Yes, SMART goals, exactly. So some characteristics of those with mastery goals. Well, adopting mastery goals predicts positive outcomes, as we've said, that include persisting at tasks, choosing to engage in similar activities in the future, and using effective cognitive and self-regulatory strategies. When students adopt mastery-oriented goals, they engage in more effective learning strategies, such as learning from their mistakes, changing strategies that don't work, seeking help when necessary. So they are more intrinsically motivated, which is the gold standard of motivation, the gold standard. So note that many of these traits relate to an individual with a high level of self-efficacy. You see how all these things are interrelated. So if you look at this list here, are there characteristics you see in your students? If you would like to share in the chat, attribute failure to a lack of effort. Helping students see that, sometimes they don't always make progress when they're not attending class. It can be a valuable thing to point out. One thing that I see here is that a lot of my learners are, they have their mastery goal, but they still have a tendency to compare with their classmates. And so they believe that learning occurs at different rates. Not always. They think, why am I taking this class and I've had to repeat it, and this other person already knows everything. So we can talk about zone of proximal, Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, that, hey, this class, your level is here, and if I have my instruction at your same level, you're not going to learn. You need to learn through challenges, and mistakes are part of learning. Those are things that we can tell our students as well. So if you can look back, let me look at the chat. Thank you. Okay, I haven't heard of this acronym before. Great goals. So if you have time, if you can share, I'm very interested in what GREAT, what that acronym stands for. Breaks down the steps and includes accountability for the person. I love that. Okay, so there's SMART, there's GREAT. There are different acronyms. Maybe you even come up with a new acronym for goals for your particular classes. So again, if you have still open that document, the self-assessment, this will be something that we'd also like you to do before you start with the course, is think of where you are currently in using goal setting with your students. So you're going to review the research findings, the implication for practice, and give yourself a self-rating. If you can check the box with the column 1, if it's something you need improvement in, 2, if you're already really good at this, or 3, you're a pro, you're a professional. Maybe you need to share what you do so well with others so that they can learn as well. Okay. So this will be that section of the self-assessment that we'd like you to start on and complete before you start the course. Let's move on. So I believe this is the last section about the learning environment. And learning environments can be created and shaped through instructional interactions, the different structures and systems, and even the tasks that we have students do. And all of these can work together to encourage our students' persistence. One thing that we do really well in adult ed is have students cooperate and collaborate in the classroom. And as you have students do this, I'm sure you notice that they build their support networks with each other. And those support networks can motivate learners to persist and attain their goals. So the learning environments and experiences that help establish positive relations with others while developing competence in particular areas also shape engagement, motivation, and persistence. We can structure the learning environment. This is something we can do. We can't always solve all of our students' barriers, but we can take control of the feel of the learning environment. We can structure the learning environment in ways that encourage learners to set different goals of different types. So if we keep in mind the importance of mastering literacy skills, learners are likely to adopt mastery goals. So how we do this is by scaffolding our lessons, and which I'm sure you're familiar with, means sequencing and structuring the content so that there is a foundation of understanding before we move on to more complex parts of the content. And we start with tasks that students have a good chance of succeeding and doing well at before we build up to tasks that require more cognitive input and thought and critical thinking and so on. So scaffolding is an important thing for us to do, something we can do in our learning environment to create a supportive and an environment that builds students' self-efficacy as they're gaining new skills. So a little part about providing feedback. Feedback helps our learners fine-tune their knowledge, their skills, and their strategies, and that can affect their learning in a number of ways that's well documented. I have to admit that maybe some of you are like this too, that sometimes I fall into the trap of recognizing and praising students' intelligence or talent, and really I'm just trying to build up their self-confidence, okay? My intention is not bad. I want to encourage and motivate them. But when we are praising intelligence or talent, that feeds into more of the fixed mindset, okay? So we are praising their personal attributes when really we should be praising their progress over time. So instead of praising a person or their end product, as Carol Dweck describes it and advocates for, praise what the student accomplished through practice, study, effort, and good strategies. And ask them, how did you do? Have them think about their process by asking them, what was your process? When they start using that metacognitive to think about how they were successful in this task, they will recognize that this strategy worked for them, okay? So to develop accurate perceptions of their competency, students need to receive clear, specific, and accurate feedback. The feedback should be appropriate to the learner's needs and be specific about the area that should be improved. And you know, nowadays, if you do anything using a learning management system, there's a grade book, which is kind of cold. So, you know, there are many different ways that we can provide feedback, and you're going to be learning about that in the course as well. But one thing I want to stress is that we shouldn't be pointing out every single error that a student creates. If you've ever taken any course that the professor pointed out every single error, that can be demotivating. So choosing, you know, deliberately and explicitly which sort of feedback and what type of errors you're going to give feedback on can help. And also helping students learn and understand that mistakes are part of learning. What we can say to students is that when you correct an error, your brain is constructing new wiring to lead you to make a better choice next time. Making a mistake can actually benefit you if you persist and figure out what went wrong and learn from it. So it's helpful for us to recognize and correct ingrained misinformation or misconceptions that our students have by providing feedback that stresses the processes of learning, such as the importance of learning strategies and using them, monitoring one's own understanding, and engaging in sustained effort, even in the face of challenges. Our adult learners are likely to put forth more effort and stay engaged in tasks they find interesting. So that's our challenge, teachers. How do I make this grammar point? How do I make this math problem interesting to my students? So researchers have made a useful distinction between personal interest and situational interest. Both types have implications for motivating adult learners. How do we know what interests our students? Well, how do you know what interests your students? What do you do to find out what is interesting to your students? If you could share in the chat something that comes to mind. Oh, thank you for that great goal worksheet. I'm going to download that. So how do you find out what interests your students? How do you know what they're going to be interested in? Well, if we have them do goal statements, right? If we have them, we help them construct a goal for the class, we're going to find out a little bit about them, and we can always relate the content to their goals. Sometimes it's in our minds, teachers, like, okay, I'm going to teach this, and that's going to help students get closer to their goals, but they don't see that connection, so we have to make it explicit. But also, getting to know them, not just through their goal statements, but getting to know our students as much as we can in the first week or so of a new class is really important. All those icebreaker types of activities, maybe an intake survey to find out about potential barriers and so on, can be past education, things like that can be very helpful. Personal interest is known as the interest that learners bring into the classroom, and it represents their long-standing preferences. When students are personally interested in topics covered in a reading passage, for example, recall of main ideas in the passages is enhanced, and subsequent motivation in reading related text is maintained. So if you're teaching basic skills reading, you may have options for what sort of texts. So you can bring in texts that are relevant to students' lives and that relate to their interests, okay? We can, for example, ask learners to list 5 topics they find interesting and find 5 that are boring for them. Situational interest is inspired by a particular event or characteristic of an experience, such as the features of a text or a task. Okay, for example, a student who has not previously expressed any interest in writing persuasive essays or paragraphs might become interested if the exercise is presented in a way that inspires interest, such as the opportunity to experience the value of a persuasive essay for college or job applications, for changing public opinion, or simply self-expression. So the real challenge is moving learners from situational to personal or sustained interest in a way that inspires them to persist, even when they find the task quite challenging. So if it's challenging, that's great. But if it has personal interest and is challenging, we're getting them to where they need to be. Okay, let's move on. So this all kind of takes together and summarizes the research findings of the learning environment. I won't read all of that to you, but you'll be learning more about choice, how that can increase intrinsic motivation as we work through creating a supportive and challenging learning environment that's challenging in a positive way. And you'll learn more about feedback and growth mindset and fostering that and so on. So as we move on, one of the strategies you're going to be learning about in the course is value. And value refers to learners' beliefs about whether an activity or task is enjoyable. So relating to intrinsic motivation or intrinsically interesting content, whether it is useful, has value, how it relates to their goals and their needs and their lives, and is important to their sense of self. And next, whether it is worth investing their time in. So I like to do this. Maybe you've done this. I make sure that every lesson has something that students will walk away thinking, I didn't know this before today. And I even ask students, as they're learning something new, I ask them, did you know this before you came to class today? No. Okay, good. It's a good thing you were here today, right? So also, you know that we can create a really supportive learning environment through those collaborative and cooperative tasks. And relating back to teacher control over the learning environment, well, a controlling or pressured climate in the classroom or at home or at work, if you've experienced this, you know that decreases motivation to perform a variety of positive behaviors. So student autonomy and choice are really important. You'll be learning more about those. So again, returning back to the self-assessment, the learning environment has a lot of different research findings, as you see. And so if you can, before you start the course, go through this checklist and give yourself a rating on these different research findings and implications. And hopefully something on all of this self-assessment, something is going to rise up as something that you want to pursue as developing in your instruction and in your methodology for motivating students to persist in our classes. Okay. So, as you look at that self-assessment for this activity, please, not thinking of rating, think of these. What specific strategies have you used? Okay, so let me go back for a moment. We have things like having students have tasks that are not too easy, not too hard, just a little bit beyond their level. We have research finding that students have some autonomy and self-direction. We have the research finding that students need feedback. We have the research finding for the learning environment that if students see value in the task that is worth their time and relates to their goals and needs, that will intrinsically motivate them. And research finding that students' motivation is increased when they use error management and attribute success positively to their effort rather than to talent or innate intelligence. All those things can have an effect. So are there any particular strategies you have used? And what strategies would you like to use in your classroom or program? So I'm looking back at this and I think, wow. Something that I've done, students' motivation is increased when they value a task. As I said, I often make sure that I'm explicit and so we're teaching past tense. How boring could that be? I try to make it engaging, and then I'm explicit about how that relates to students' goals. When are you going to use past tense? Not just here it is, the grammar, but relating it to relevance of their lives. So if you have any of those strategies that you have used for creating this learning environment that supports students' motivation and persistence, if you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to do that. Or if there's something new that comes to mind. Thank you, Lindsay. I love this. Yes. So again, teacher control over the environment. Too much teacher control decreases motivation. Giving students choices in learning. You can do this on your own. Maybe you have those introverts who just need the time silent to work on their own. You're sociable. You learn by speaking with others in partners, small groups, saying, hey, I love this one, Lindsay. I actually did this myself too. I had a new course and I had my class was already full. So I knew there weren't going to be new students. I gave them a list of topics and I sent it out by email. Which of these topics interest you most, right? Yes. And differentiation. So starting, making this relates to equity, starting at where the students are overall as a class, but also providing differentiation so that everybody can get up to the level. I love that, Greg. ask students to teach me something that they know. And this honors our students' wide-ranging backgrounds. They come to us not blank slates. They have lifetimes of experiences that we can tap into. And when we, this is the beauty, right, Greg, of our profession. I learn something from my students every day, and I thank them for that. And they love to teach the teacher. They really do. It gives them a sense of pride. So thank you for sharing that. Excellent ideas, everybody. So we're just about finishing up. The topics we have covered today reflect the best available research. Please do some research yourself. Please, as you finish up the course in the next month, maybe you'll do some action-based research in your class and share the results with others. We need more research in this area. So this is all based on the, best available research that we have in adult ed on learning and motivation, and how the research findings might be applied in developing instruction for our learners. The strategies and approaches we have discussed need to be modified to take into account our adults' unique learning needs and learning goals. And what needs to be taught and how it needs to be taught will vary depending on the individual's existing literacy skills, learner goals, age, and linguistic background, and many other factors too. We do need more research to determine how best to design strategies and practices to meet the needs of adult learners. So that's a wrap almost. Are there any questions or comments before we finish up today? All right, so I will go ahead and hand it off to Hannah. I think you're going to love this course. These 9 strategies I have been using religiously since I started working on the modules back in 2018. Last term, I started with 30 students and only 1 stopped out. They really work. They really do. So thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Christy, for that amazing presentation. I learned so much today, and I really hope that others feel the same. I want to use our last few minutes together to go over the next steps for continuing on with this professional development opportunity. And there are 3 primary activities that you're going to be participating in. Those 3 activities are: first, completing a self-directed course on motivating adult learners to persist; also joining discussions in a private links group; and third, attending a wrap-up and reflection webinar to close out this professional development opportunity. So I'm going to go through each of these things briefly now. So first, if you don't already have a Links user ID, this is the place you need to start. You have to create a Links user account in order to access both the course and the private discussion group. So you can do this by scanning the QR code on the screen to create an account. I'm also going to show you where to go on the Links website in a moment. You also received this information via Giovanna earlier, and so you can also go back and find those links in her email, and then you'll be able to follow that to create a Links ID. So once you have a Links ID, or if you already have one, please share your user ID with me. My email is on the screen, but we'll also send it out following this webinar. Again, Giovanna has also been emailing you all with this request, so if it's easier to just email Giovanna with your ID, that's fine too. So I'm going to go to the website now to show you how to create a user ID if you haven't done so already. Okay, so here I am on the Links website. When you go to the home screen at the top, this is actually what will be showing up when you first navigate there. And then when you click on the community tab, I'm logged in at the moment. Let me log out so that you don't see that information. So again, I was at the home screen. I went to the community tab at the top of the screen. If you go to log in, even if you don't have an account, you'll see here these 3 buttons: log in, create new account, or reset your password. So for those of you who are going to create a new account, this is where you need to go to create the account. Please note that once you submit the request to create an account, it does take at least a day for that request to go through the system. So we won't be able to enroll you immediately in the community of practice, but we will be able to shortly. So that's why it's critical that you do this first if you haven't done this already. Let me go back to the PowerPoint now. And again, here's the QR code if you need that to be able to get to the correct place in the website. Okay, so then once you are there, after you have a Lynx user ID and you share it with me, I will enroll you in the private group. So you can't enroll yourself. I have to enroll you in the private group. But once I've enrolled you in the private group, then you will go to the Lynx website, navigate to the groups tab, and find our group. Once there, you're going to be able to join in on the discussions. Christy has already introduced herself in there, and I invite all of you to introduce yourselves as well. And then Christy will be posting 1 new discussion each week. The first one will be starting this coming Monday, November 13th. Her introduction is already in there, so you can get in there right away and do your introduction as well. And then again, the next post will be coming on Monday. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to the website. Bear with me for a second so that I can show you how to actually access our group. So yours is going to look a little bit different than mine just because I'm enrolled in so many different groups. But you can see here I'm on the community tab and I'm already logged in. There's my picture. You have to be logged in or you're not going to be able to access this. And then you see this gray bar in the middle of the screen here. Community, my links, groups, events, about, help, and search. You go to groups. Oh, I got logged out. Okay, let me log myself back in. Okay, so now I'm logged in. Again, I go to the groups tab in the middle here. Then on the left side of the screen, I go to my groups. I have way more groups than you have, but if I scroll down, we will be looking for Lynx TA on Motivating Adult Learners to Persist and Succeed, Florida. So if I go to this board, we can see Christy's welcome is already here. So please come on in and invite and introduce yourselves to our group. All right, going back to the PowerPoint again. The second activity that I mentioned is that you are going to complete the self-directed course, and that course is called Motivating Adult Learners to Persist. The course takes about 3.5 hours to complete, and you'll need to complete it prior to our wrap-up webinar. So I know you all are busy, you have lots going on. Make sure to schedule time into your busy calendars to make progress in the course now. You don't have to do it all at one time. It will save your progress as you go. So if you want to take the course in smaller chunks of time, you absolutely can do that. So again, I'm going to navigate to the website to show you how to access this course. Okay, so this time, if we are on the blue bar at the top of the screen, you can see that I have selected the Courses tab. I need to log in. Okay, I'm logged in. And then what I'm going to do is scroll all the way down. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy, but I'm scrolling all the way down. And we can see the Motivating to Adult Learners to Persist course is under the heading of Teacher Effectiveness. It's 3.5 hours long. Here's the description. When I click on that course, here again is an additional description developed by Christy Reyes. So again, you're working with an expert. We're very lucky to have Christy with us. And then what you'll do is click this Enroll Me button. So I don't have to enroll you for this one. You can enroll yourself when you're ready to get started. Again, make sure that you save time. It takes about 3.5 hours to complete the course. So you'll want to get your Lynx account and enroll yourself in this course as soon as possible. One more time, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right, and then the third and final activity that I mentioned that's a part of this professional development opportunity is the wrap-up webinar. That webinar is going to take place on December 5th at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Prior to the webinar, you need to have completed that self-directed course that I just mentioned on the previous slide. And as part of that, you'll want to bring both your pre and post-course self-assessment with you to this webinar on December 5th. You'll also be in small groups discussing the questions that you see on the screen. So reflect on these questions before you come to that webinar. The questions are, which principles stand out as areas you want to learn more about? Which principles will you investigate further for implementation? And what do you predict the results will be? We're going to post all of these tasks in the discussion group, so don't worry about remembering all of this today, but we just wanted to preview it with you so that you had a sense of where you're going following today's webinar, and again, so that you could start to schedule in those important dates prior to December 5th. So again, let me reiterate one more time. The first step is to create a Links account and share the username with me or with Giovanna. Then you'll be able to self-enroll in the self-directed course, and I will enroll you in the private community of practice. And then we'll see you on December 5th at 1 o'clock Eastern. Again, all of this information will be shared with you via email and in our links group, but that's just to give you a sense of where we're going. So here is our contact information. If you need Christy in the meantime, please feel free to reach out. And I also want to ask, Greg and Giovanna have a survey that they would like you to take following our webinar. So please, please take that survey. I think they'll be putting a link in the chat maybe for you. And thank you again to Christy for facilitating this webinar today, and to Greg for allowing us to come and participate with your state in this amazing training opportunity. So thank you to everyone. That evaluation link is in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing just in case there are questions that you want to ask. Otherwise, we will see you in our discussion group, and we'll see you live on December 5th for our wrap-up webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Christy. Again, everyone, I posted on the chat the instructions Hannah just shared about how to create your Links account and how to access the course. And please, if you haven't done so, send Hannah or myself or both of us your username so that way Hannah can add you to the discussion posts. And thank you so much for coming.
Okay. Thank you, Christy and Hannah. Great job. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good afternoon.
Thank you.